That it?
Hi, Barbara.
Hello, Marina. It's lovely to see you.
For me as well. Thank you to have accepted to have a dialogue with me for the occasion of the Barbara Sparti celebration in June. First of all, I would ask you to present yourself briefly.
As a student, I came over from Australia to London to do a doctorate in psychology at London University. Then when I finished that, I did a master's degree in pharmacology. So I was all set to be an academic in psychopharmacology when I discovered early dance. And my whole life changed, and I've spent the last 35 years just totally immersed in early dance and related things, from early dance from the 15th to the 19th century. I teach, I perform, I'm a dance historian. I've got a performing group, Shalami. We do early dance and music theatre, and we run the Shalami summer school. I've organised that for the last 23 years, and I teach Baroque dance there, and there's singing, music, commedia, and costume making. I'm a member of the Early Dance Circle. I'm the membership secretary, and for the last 16 years, I've organised their biennial conferences in the UK. And edited the proceedings of all the conferences. I do a lot of teaching all over, including the Royal Academy of Dance, taught early dance to people on ballet education degree. I give lectures, I write papers, I teach singers Baroque gesture. I think that's me.
Thank you very much. And maybe can you tell me how you met Barbara Sparti, in which occasion?
I first met her in 1985. I was just starting in the early dance world, and it was at the conference, the big conference at Ghent. All the early dance world was there, and I think her performing group was there. Don't know whether you were performing with her then, right? But I've met her lots of times. She often came to London because her daughter lived there, so she liked coming here, and she gave papers and talks and classes. I met her a few times in Berlin when she was teaching there and I was performing there. I think there was in Rome, an Italian early dance conference, and I stayed with her in her beautiful little flat. And I can remember you had to walk. I seem to remember that we walked over other people's rooftops to get into her flat. I mean, it was a situation that could never, ever occur in England. But of course, the place where I really got to know and love her was in Poland. I think it was 2006. I went there with my performing group Shalami to perform, and Barbara was there that year. Then for the next 13 years, I went back every year to teach and perform. And well, we got to know each other very well. Barbara was the only other native English speaker, and maybe as a result of that, we formed a great bond. We were great allies, and all the teachers were housed together. So, you know, when you're sitting over breakfast or dinner or something, it's just a wonderful time to get to know somebody. I can remember there was a little hotel, Erasmus, next to where we taught. Sitting there having breakfast with Barbara, eating our scrambled eggs was a wonderful time. And she was just such an interesting person. She had quite strong views. She'd always ask you questions that no one else would ask you. But she had a great wit and a great sense of humor, and we had enormous fun there. I think a lot of the foreigners should sometimes get quite angry, but it was really just play anger. And I think some of the foreign people didn't quite understand and were a bit frightened of her. I went on teaching there for another 6 years, but after Barbara's death, it was just never the same for me. I missed her. I used to talk to her and play with her, and we had such fun there together. I can remember there was the French Renaissance dance teacher, Marie Claire, and she would always lots and lots of greeting kisses whenever we met. Mm-hmm. And so Barbara and I would ring each other before going to Poland and say, we must get into practice in our kissing technique. Things like that. So it was just never quite the same for me after she stopped playing. So I missed her very much in Poland, and I miss her very, very much in general, because she was a great lady, great fun to be with.
And can you say something about her teaching, her way of teaching? Have you been studying dance with her, Italian Renaissance dance with her, or just observed her teaching?
Yeah, I was never in one of her classes, but I sometimes saw her teaching. She was so I can't say very much about that. She had a very gentle style. I mean, a lot of us have, a very pronounced style, but she was I can remember her always saying to people, don't do it very much, ombreggiare, no, just a tiny bit, almost not at all. I can remember her saying things like that. So it was a sort of very gentle style that she did. But I'm not sure that I was ever in a class of hers.
And what about her research? Have you?
Fantastic! Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I use it. I read her books and articles and things like that. There was one thing that I would have loved to talk to her about, and when she did 15th century, she used opposition. You all use opposition, and I don't. I use a swaying movement into a single side, and so that was quite different between us. And she refused ever to talk about it, which was very sad. She had very strong opinions, and it was quite hard to, if she had a very strong feeling for something, it was quite hard to get her even to talk about it. I can remember she visited us here once and was talking to Bill about polyphonic versus homophonic music or something like that, and I thought they were going to physically come to blows.
Okay, what could you say about projects you have done together? Have you had projects together for teaching or researching or just fun together?
We didn't have any projects together, no. I mean, she, I don't remember she did it because we taught sometimes at the same time, sometimes at different times, and she had a class in Poland, and I was free for an hour, so I remember joining in contrapasso. And then she was very tired, and so I quickly ran back to the hotel to make a pot of coffee, and I brought it back to her class.
Mhm.
And then I was just going to creep out, and she said, "Oh, please stay for the next dance." And the next dance was Santucci, and I have really never done anything with Santucci. I know almost nothing about it, but I've seen both Barbara and Dorothée Waterboard do it, and it's a very style which you sort of lope, go up and down on your instep. And I said, "Oh no, I don't want to say that. I hate Santucci." And Barbara, I mean, I didn't realize she must have been really, really, really hurt by it. And for the rest of the week in Poland, she went around saying, "That Barbara Segal, she said that she hates Santucci." And that was one time when, they thought she might be really angry with me, but she wasn't really. She was only doing it. I mean, it was fun. Obviously she was somewhat hurt, but she was also just playing and having fun. But I think they believed her and thought, "Oh, what about that?" I suppose that's an example really of, I think of Barbara as being a very sort of soft dancer, just lilting on the instep a bit. Whereas I like the contrast between a really sharp movement and then a very flowing movement. I really like that contrast. And so what I saw of Santucci didn't seem to have that contrast. But I mean, I'm speaking from a position of total ignorance. So
And, a final question: what about an anecdote, a little story that you can keep with you about the memory of Barbara?
Oh dear. I think it's just sitting over breakfast, eating. We usually had scrambled eggs for breakfast, and just we'd talk about dance sometimes and gossiping about everybody we knew. And that breakfast in the early days, it just seemed to be me and Barbara alone in the hotel. And I that they have very precious memories for me.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
I suppose also visiting her is that in the little flat in Trastevere, wherever it is. That was also a very, very nice time. And she was very nice to me and looked after me very well.
Thank you very much. Now we are playing together. So I am proposing some letters constituting the initial of the name and the whole surname of Barbara, B. Sparti. And each one of these letters will or not inspire you something about her. So we start. B.
I'd really like to do BS together because, and it's a terrible word, it's the word bullshit. Because Barbara was so, well, as I say, very forthright in her opinions. And so often people say things and you disagree strongly with them. And most people wouldn't say it, but Barbara would say, "Oh, that's bullshit." It's funny, there's a program on the radio going at the moment and they're asking people about, you know, whether something's very good or not, like is sourdough bread better than white bread or something, and they speak for half an hour, and at the end somebody is asked, is this BS or SB? Is it bullshit or sliced bread? Sliced bread, you know, one says there's, you know, it's nearly as good as sliced bread. That's an English phrase. So I can just see Barbara sort of, you know, sitting there saying, "Oh, that's bullshit." Some people taking it, you know, her very seriously and getting upset, but for me it was wonderful because I would usually agree with her.
That's true. She was like that, in fact. What about P? The letter P.
She was a very private person. I mean, although she would express lots of opinions, she was always also quite private about herself, I think. Whereas a lot of people tell you all about themselves, she didn't so much. Hey, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to
It's
say.
enough. It's very good. What about A?
Well, what if I say angle, that she could often see a different angle? She had a very sharp brain, very sharp mind, and people would express ideas about things. And she quite often could see a different angle, which was very, very interesting, different from what people normally thought, except about ombre jar.
What about R?
Can't think of any word. Ruthless. She certainly wasn't ruthless. She was always quite kind to everybody. So she was not ruthless. I don't know.
Okay, we go on with T.
I think of the word tactile, but I don't know that she was very tactile. Truthful. What about truthful? Truthful. Yes, let's say truthful. She was quite truthful. And for instance, I can remember once we were sitting in the audience watching the Cracovia Dancer show. They're all professional ballet dancers and professional early dancers. And so they were always very nice performances, but she did a lot of advising for them, very valuable. And I can remember one of the choreographers coming up to us after, and she was very critical, i.e. very truthful. And I was quite surprised that at that moment she was prepared to be so truthful. I mean, I'm sure in a way it was a bit disappointing for this man, but also very, very useful for him. Yeah, truthful.
And E to finish with.
I. Let's say interesting. She just had lots of interesting ideas and quite a lot of novel ideas. Well, as I say, she could often, at a lecture or something, she could often think of things that people didn't think about. But in general, she was just very interesting to be with, because she, yeah, that's all I say.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Do you want to say something to conclude?
I don't know. I just that it, you know, her death was such a loss to the early dance world. She did so much. She wrote so many papers, and so many really interesting papers. And her death was, you know, it's just a pity she couldn't live another 50 years and write other books. And I mean, her book on Abrea was just incredibly useful for so many people. I still use it quite a lot, particularly to look at her ideas about the music and all of those things. So yeah, I wish she could have lived another 50 years.
Thank you very much, Barbara. It was very interesting to talk with you, and thank you again.
It was very nice to see you again, Marina. Let's hope we meet again.
J'arrête, I stop the recording.
Okay.